Okay. Dear friends of Love for Volleyball and More for Volleyball, I have the honor to talk today with a very relevant person and was the Executive Director of the International Volleyball Hall of Fame in the city of Holyoke in the United States, and has a very important role in expanding the actions of the Hall of Fame in the development of our sport. I'm referring to George Mulry, who is currently speaking today with me. Hello, George. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you?
Fine, thanks here in Chile. First of all, George, I wanted to ask you about your beginning in sport. Did you start playing volleyball in school or not? How was it for you in your beginning in sport in your life?
Yeah, I mean, early on for me, it was really other sports that I was drawn to. I played soccer for many years. 6 or 7 years of my life was dedicated to playing soccer. I played baseball and basketball as well. And it wasn't really until I got into high school that I saw just kind of what volleyball could be. We had always played a little bit in the backyard. In the U.S., it's a big thing to do around July 4th weekend, especially in the Northeast. We don't get a very long summer, so we try to take advantage of being outdoors as much as we can, and certainly volleyball is a piece of that. But when I finally played a little bit of organized volleyball, even in our physical education classes, it just kind of got me hooked. And so it wasn't until my junior year, my third year of high school, that I decided to even try out to play for the high school volleyball team. And I was fortunate to be given an opportunity to do that because it's changed the trajectory of my life, just with that one decision of the coach to say, yeah, I think we have space for one kid that's really not very good but wants to learn. And, I think I've been forever grateful for that.
And it was a love at first sight. And how was it for you to be able to play volleyball? Because if I'm not wrong, you were born near Holyoke, where volleyball was invented. And how was it for you to be part of this, to be part of the history of volleyball in the United States, where volleyball is so big, especially in college in college league? How was it for you to be part of this and start playing volleyball and fell in love with volleyball?
Yeah, well, I think, it's really special. I think it's unique to have volleyball, this international Olympic sport, and we also have basketball and other international Olympic sport that was all invented just 10 miles apart from each other. And I think growing up, I know that it's certainly talked about when you drive into Holyoke, you see right away, as soon as you get off the highway, anywhere you enter the city, it says birthplace of volleyball. But as a kid, you don't really understand just the true impact that has. And so we knew that it was special, but we didn't know that it was such a huge honor at the time. And I think it was really when I got into college and started learning a little bit more about volleyball that we see just how really special and unique Holyoke was to the story of volleyball.
Absolutely. I have here the patch of the police. It says also volleyball, birthplace of volleyball. It's amazing. All is volleyball in Holyoke. It's amazing. And how was it this time? Because I have the opportunity to interview many persons internationally or people who has played in the United States in the college, and all that they told me about their impressions about the fantastic thing to do, because volleyball in the United States, especially college volleyball, as I spoke with Doug Beagle or Steve Bishop, they told me that's growing. It's impressive. Maybe some more than another sports in the United States. How was it for you to be part of this and see in first person the college volleyball?
Yeah, I mean, I know for me, it was, I was at the University of Massachusetts, so I stayed close to home when I went to college, and I had the opportunity to be on the club volleyball team there. We didn't have a varsity men's sport. It just wasn't supported. And so we would travel to tournaments and we would practice, and it was kind of the club sports were the forgotten sports. So we would practice at 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night, whenever the other gyms were free. And so we just came to love the game. It wasn't for any of the things that go along with it, like we have now. I mean, there's so much support for collegiate athletics, and there's so much money that flows through it. But certainly on the volleyball side, especially, the women's NCAA volleyball is just absolutely an incredible high level here in the United States. Men's volleyball, the same thing, and continues to grow. And so it's been really great to see that, even just over the last 10 years. I think that was the big piece, is that it's always been there, for the last 40 years.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
to see just how much has exploded recently, kind of since the early 2000s, has been really incredible.
Incredible. And when you were young and played volleyball at college, did you knew about, for example, the Olympic team of 84, 88, of the women's volleyball internationally, or you was just playing in Massachusetts, and maybe the media didn't show more about international volleyball or American volleyball?
Yeah, I didn't know much about international volleyball for sure. It wasn't anything that was covered, certainly by the media that we followed. But as I started to learn the sport, I tried to source out as many resources as I can. And so one of the first things I did was read Doug Beal's book. I tried to read as many books as I could. Volleyball Magazine was a great resource as well. And so you learn a lot just by going to those and kind of learning that little bit of history. But I think it was even to the point that I didn't know. I mean, growing up in Holyoke, we knew that there was a Volleyball Hall of Fame.
Yes.
But aside from a school trip there one time, I had never been and didn't really understand truly what it was. And I think the same is true, that I knew that the U.S. had a good team in 1984 on the men's and the women's side, and in 1980 as well, for that fact, on the women's side.
Yes.
But there wasn't any. I didn't have the resources at the time to really learn about their stories.
Yes, and I was last year in Holyoke. Many people maybe don't know. I was in the event for the introduction and the ceremony of the class of 2033, and many times I talk with people like you or other persons who were there about the for us, especially from South America, from Chile, so far away from the United States, that it's impressive that you have so many years of volleyball. As you told me recently, 50, 60 years. My father, he was a volleyball player. He remembered to play against the United States team in the 70s, for example, or the late 60s. But United States volleyball wasn't so good and that time in the 70s, I don't know, and then began this famous project with Doug Beal and also the women team, this famous women team. So for me, it's very, very hard to believe that people like you or many people in their youth didn't know about volleyball, because I think maybe you have so many other sports, so famous other sports like basketball, ice hockey, American football. I don't know, that maybe it has the concentration of the media. Yeah, so it's maybe a little hard to understand, especially as we spoke in the United States about the importance of the Hall of Fame. So I wanted to ask you, George, about you told me right now about that that there were in Holyoke some Hall of Fame of volleyball. You went to with your schoolmates, but how was it for you later when you were growing in the United States after college to visualize maybe you could be part of this, as now you're working in the Hall of Fame, but as a former college, I don't know how you say alumni from your college, how was it for you to visualize volleyball as your part of your life?
Well, I actually got introduced to the Hall of Fame the same way that you did. So in 1998, I went to my first induction, and that just happened to be the first year that we inducted an international person. It had always been only inductees from the United States prior to that. And so I guess at the time, again, I didn't realize just how special and important that moment was. But it was at that induction that I was able to kind of learn a little bit more about the Hall of Fame. This was, again, when I was a junior in high school. And so I got to experience that event and see that these people came into Holyoke, and just how special it was for them. And so that was the resource where I got to hear some of their stories as they were giving their inductee speeches. And we had President's Luncheon. There was a meet and greet before that. So there was just so much accessibility. And so I had been to every induction since 1998 for the Hall of Fame. Whether I was involved with the Hall or not, I just knew that that was the event that I had to go to for all the same reasons that you had. Once you get there, you just understand that there's something special that happens and goes on there, and you want to be a part of it. And so being introduced to the Hall of Fame that way just got me hooked right from the beginning. And I knew that if I ever had an opportunity to do something, I'd love to do something to help improve Holyoke, and having the Hall of Fame in Holyoke was an easy move for me. And so I got involved with the Hall of Fame as I was coaching volleyball. So this was a few years later. I was coaching girls high school volleyball, and the Hall of Fame was starting a tournament, Showcase of Champions. And so they wanted to showcase some local teams along with some regional and some national, or at least Northeast champions within this group. And so I just hopped on and decided to help out any way that I could. And that was what got me involved with the board of directors of the Hall, and kind of meeting some of the people behind the scenes, learning their stories and how they got involved. And it just sort of led to opportunities with the Hall.
Absolutely. It's fantastic, because every time I want to make a new interview or make a post in my channels, I think about the importance of history in volleyball, in sport, and in sport, because I think our history helps us to build our future. So especially in volleyball, we have this handicap for these other sports that I mentioned before. But I wanted to briefly comment you something in after I returned from Holyoke. There was the Pan American Games here in Chile, and I have the super opportunity to invite Werner Reichmann from Brazil to my home for dinner. And he told me he was there in Holyoke, and we talked about his experience. And I think it's so important for the people who were inductees or have the opportunity like me to be there, because not always the volleyball players or the trainers have the opportunity to be honored, or to be or to know that somebody remembers him. We are human. We want to have some little love sometimes. So I think what Bernard Reichmann was impressed. He was until now very, very happy to be part of this. And I wanted to ask you, going a little back again of your life, of your biography. You told me you are a volleyball trainer. How was this history to become a volleyball trainer?
Yeah, well, that was actually because of the interaction that I had with my coach at Holyoke High School. When she gave me that opportunity to be a part of that team, it just sparked something inside of me. When I learned just how much I loved volleyball and all the parts of it, I wanted to learn as much as I could. And everything that I had to read was revolving around coaching. And so I never had an intention of trying to coach, or I didn't know that I had any of those skills. And I'm not sure that I do, but it's been a really great opportunity for me to learn the sport. And so I decided to approach it that way because I was so new. So I graduated high school. I only was able to play for those 2 years, my junior and senior year. And then when I was a freshman in college, I went back to Holyoke High School while I was still in college to work as a volunteer assistant coach. And then my sophomore year, my second year of college, was when I started actually coaching their junior varsity team at Holyoke on the boys team. And I just absolutely loved the sport. And I always felt that there was this opportunity in the back of my mind that someone could show up to tryouts, and I would be the one to give them the opportunity that helps change some of the trajectory in their life, like that coach did for me.
The tryouts, for people maybe that didn't know, please tell me about what is a tryout in volleyball, please.
Yeah, so just because you say you want to play volleyball doesn't mean that you're going to be part of the team. So there's limited spots on all of these teams. And at Holyoke, we had 2 teams, and they're maybe made up of 14 players each. And so we're only talking about 28 total players. And if 50 people all want to be part of the team, then it's going to be the coach's job to try to figure out who those best 28 are, whether it's volleyball skill, how they work together, or that combination of things. And so you feel really fortunate when you're selected out of that group, because there's usually more people that want to be involved than who actually can be.
Exactly. And for example, in your team, I remember some of your players were in the evening in ceremony. all of them wanted to play in college. They want to be a national player, or maybe some of them have this dream. Because what you tell me about the tryouts, I have read and watched about the tryouts for the national team. It's always a very important event in USA volleyball. How was it for you, to your players? They wanted to continue volleyball. How do you feel they're doing with history in volleyball?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. So most of my players are student athletes for sure. That the school is their number one priority. Volleyball and any other sports that they do are secondary. And so we've had a lot of players that go on to play Division I volleyball, 2, 3, and a lot of players that stop volleyball. That their high school volleyball might be the last time they play volleyball. And I think that's true for most of them. A lot of my players, they'll end up going to schools that have incredible volleyball programs. They're very high level Division I volleyball, and they're just not quite at the skill level that they need to be for that. So they're going mostly for the schooling aspect, but there's certainly some that they want to play in college. They don't care if they get a scholarship to go. They want to continue volleyball, and several of them have come back and started coaching at various schools, which is probably the biggest compliment that we can receive, is when the players want to give back again and continue to do that.
Very interesting. And I also have the opportunity to interview some owners of volleyball academies, ex-former volleyball player from the United States, for example, or Brazilian or Peruvian, and players who have academies in the United States. And they told me about the importance of the academies, because many parents wanted that their children, especially women, are able to obtain a scholarship and to study in college. Maybe it's a little different outside the United States, but knowing the importance of this, of school volleyball, of college volleyball, and maybe the possibility to play in the national team or go outside and play in Italy, in Poland, I don't know. How is your vision about this college volleyball in the United States? That really told me it's growing fast, very fast. Steve Bishop's also. And how? What is your vision about the college volleyball and how this major league impact in volleyball in general in the United States?
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting because I know that we're also getting more and more international players within the U.S. collegiate system, and I think that's only helped bring the level of play up. But I know, back to the first point that you mentioned, college is so expensive. So a lot of these schools that are competing at Division I, if you're getting a scholarship for 4 years, that's $250,000, $300,000 that you don't have to worry about paying. And so I think that's obviously a big concern to a lot of people. And so they want to try to do as many things as they can. And playing club volleyball, academy volleyball is certainly probably the top thing you can do to sort of be noticed and be recognized, because that is just, the youth female volleyball has exploded in popularity throughout the entire country. And certainly you see that go up the pipeline to collegiate volleyball as well. And for a long time, I know that we have the professional volleyball coming to the United States on the women's side. There's several leagues that are kind of launching within this year and next year. And I think prior to that, NCAA women's volleyball has really been our highest level of volleyball. That's been the professional league as a de facto right now. And so I think that helped grow the sport as well, because there were no other chances to see people play at a high level.
Absolutely. I remember to have seen some of ESPN volleyball transmission in the beginning of the 80s. Just the women volleyball of NCAA, I don't know, the college volleyball, and we were asking where these people, why did they play in the university with so many so big crowds? We didn't understand nothing. And after this, we saw the final in Los Angeles, and we could manage some understanding about volleyball in the United States, but until many years later, we couldn't understand a little more, because we didn't have so many media, so many social networks as today to know about what's happening in this time in the United States. And I wanted to ask you and continue with our conversation about the Hall of Fame. When were you able to work in the Hall of Fame, and how was it possible to get inside of the organization?
Yeah, I was just, again, extremely lucky and fortunate. So we talked about the Hall of Fame kind of starting this high school tournament. And so they started that tournament in 2007. Mm-hmm. And so I was involved just helping on the back end of that tournament for several years. Okay. And one of the board members had approached me about a potential opening on the board of directors. Okay. And asked if I wanted to join. And again, being from Holyoke, it just felt like such an extreme honor to help out in some official capacity. And so in 2010, the end of 2009, 2010, I was voted onto the board of directors. And so I was a board member for just over a year. And within that time, the executive director, we had a part-time executive director prior to that. Okay. And we had some financial instability at the Hall of Fame. And so we had to eliminate that position. And so for several years, there was nobody at the Hall of Fame checking the mailbox or doing any of the day-to-day operations or really trying to grow the hall in any way. It was all run by volunteers. Mm-hmm. And so we had a one-time contribution from the FIVB, and we decided to use that toward an executive director position. And so we were able to fund the position for 1 year. And I was on the committee that was putting together the job description for the executive director for who we wanted. Mm-hmm. And as we were putting everything together, I started to look and think about my resume. And there were a lot of things that I was able to check off, as they say, check the boxes on. And so I knew that whoever was going to accept this position, it was a very low-paying position. It would require anyone that was interested would probably have to move in order to take it. And then the funding was only for 1 year. So if the position didn't make enough money at the end of the year, you would be out of a job. Yes. And so there were a lot of elements of risk and other things that went in. And so I think that also helped move me to the front of the line or a little bit closer to the final interviews, whereas I was able to absorb the risk a little bit more than some of the other people that were interested in the position. I think we had 4 or 5 total applicants that were more than qualified to be able to do this job, and the board ultimately selected me as that person. And so I started in April of 2011 as the executive director. But I was the first to admit that I had I went to school for business. I have a sport management degree from the Eisenberg School of Management. And so I understood the business aspect, but I had never been involved in running a nonprofit, which the Hall of Fame is. And so there's some special considerations for that. And so there was a lot of on-the-job learning for several years, and there still is to this day. Things are ever evolving, but it was just sort of this string of luck and being in the right place at the right time for these opportunities that I was able to take advantage of. Absolutely.
You said the perfect phrase. And looking back on this moment until today, what you feeling about being part of this, especially in this time of the Hall of Fame?
I am so incredibly lucky to be able to do this job. I think that one of the things that drew me into coaching was being able to have an impact on people's lives, see them accomplish their goals. And we really get to do that every single induction. Anytime we honor someone, anytime we recognize someone, it's that same feeling that I got when I was a coach and you see them serve the ball over the net for the first time or finally get a big kill or a big block. And so for me personally, it's being able to keep living those moments year after year. And then the bigger piece is just knowing the historical value that the International Volleyball Hall of Fame has and being the steward of that history, being able to make sure that we're telling the story of volleyball the way it's meant to be for generations to come.
It's amazing because I always think that many paths are getting together. Even if we live in Chile, very far away from the south of the world, United States and Russia and Japan, I don't know. When I started my project in 2017, I looked in Instagram and internet, and many times I saw a Hall of Fame in the United States and Holyoke, and I asked myself, what is this? A Hall of Fame who what? And the most that it was interesting in watching the website and this year was about the collections you have, about the T-shirts, about the sports shoes, the many vintage or memorabilia things you have in this time. The webpage were very different as today, but was very interesting to know about the concept of Hall of Fame. I said many times, and we talked about this in the United States, that this concept of Hall of Fame I think, is not very known outside the United States. You have Hall of Fame of rock and roll, Hall of Fame of cars, trains, I don't know, but outside America, we have museums, for example, or some collection that a person around the world make for some events, for example. And so the concept of Hall of Fame, I think, one side is very important because we must honor our history, but maybe by the other side is a concept that, in my personal opinion, we must massify, because it's so important that people knows about this. And I know you're the important person today, not me, but I want to ask some reflection about the things that, for example, the NBA has done with their history, with their historical players. You ask a kid in any part of the world, you ask him, name me 3 historical players of basketball. They will name you Larry Bird, Michael Jordan, and I don't know, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. But you ask them about volleyball players, and they look at you, and if they don't play volleyball at school, they didn't know anybody. So I wanted to ask you about the importance of the Hall of Fame today, and your plans for this year and the long-term future.
Yeah, well, I think what you said is extremely important and very true, that Hall of Fame concept in general is very, very much just within North America. It's a United States and Canada really embrace this Hall of Fame idea, whereas the rest of the world, it's just a museum.
Yes.
And I think that we need to make a distinction and maybe tell our story better to say that it's the International Volleyball Hall of Fame and Museum. Yes. Because we really do 2 separate things. And I think that it is important to honor the legends of our sport in some way, that they have their specific stories to tell that are going to be uplifting and motivational for others. And that is what the professional leagues in the United States, specifically NBA with basketball, the NFL with football, they tell the stories of their top players.
Yes.
And you see this a little bit at the Olympics. So every 4 years, the Olympics will come on. They'll tell the stories of a few athletes. Everyone will get so excited. Yes. And then that's the end of it. Whereas all these professional leagues do it consistently. And so I think that if we can continue to do a better job of that, being the consistent voice for the stories of our sport, that the Hall of Fame is only going to continue to grow. I know from our standpoint, we have a very small museum. The museum itself is only about 4,500 square feet, which, is maybe the size of a large house, basically. Yes. Mm-hmm. And so we have a lot of artifacts and other pieces of history that we're not able to display. So part of what we're trying to do is get all of that history digitized, so it's scanned in, have photos. If there's videos, we make sure that they're available. We want to make that available on our website. So we're looking to completely redesign our website, make it a bit more useful going forward for us, so that we can continue to grow and expand there with online exhibits. Again, not necessarily geared towards just the inductees, but more the stories of the sport, and being able to highlight that piece of history. Most of the visitors to our website, we found, kind of looking through some of our statistics, almost every single visitor is there for the historical piece. Yes. And we want to learn about the history of volleyball, how basketball and volleyball are tied together, the story of William Morgan. And so the inductees and the other pieces are extremely important, but secondary for why people tend to visit us. And so we want to spend a little bit more time improving the historical stories that we tell.
Absolutely. many times I think you studied sport management, and you know the importance of business, of money in sport. It's absolutely relevant today and for many times. And I have also the opportunity to visit the Hall of Fame of basketball in Springfield. And as we're speaking, basketball NBA has so much money, and they can make this building of his history. And I dream that someday volleyball has the same Hall of Fame, a very big building in Holyoke, to show all our history. So, but I'm sure that you will make this possible sometime, because I've seen your work and all the passion you and your team put in all this events, all this work you do every day, because it's so important. And I remember, for example, speaking with some Olympic medalist from Barcelona, player from Brazil, and he told me, he's a coach today in Brazil, and he told me many players of his team didn't know that he plays at that final and won the gold in Barcelona, and he must show them a video in YouTube. I don't know, and the young players were impressed that the coach played so well volleyball. So I think we spoke with him and many other persons about the importance to show them the history of volleyball, to show them that volleyball didn't start yesterday. Volleyball started 100 years ago. We have so many players in championships and gold medals, and Hall of Fame is so important for doing this. I wanted to ask you about what we're talking about, the word of honoring volleyball players, volleyball history. And you mentioned that I know some museum, for example, in Italy, I don't know, some exhibitions in Brazil about volleyball. Did the Hall of Fame of Holyoke have some connection with this other, I don't know how to say it, institution or maybe persons who want to make a little history of volleyball, or your work is only referring to volleyball in the Hall of Fame?
Well, I think it's a couple of things. We know that within our bubble of the International Hall of Fame and our board of directors, we're not able to tell all the stories. And so we need relationships with other organizations. One of the great things that we started last year and are really looking to improve this year is our International Media Advisory Group. And we've asked you again to be part of that group and help lead that in some way as well. Because we think that group is going to be the bridge between us and the other organizations and the other opportunities to tell stories and to collaborate. And I think that's the piece that we're all going to need to kind of continue to raise up volleyball and make it in the forefront of everybody.
Yes, absolutely. And going back, and excuse my self, I don't know how to say it, but I was so happy to be last year in Holyoke, and I saw the passion that you put in the event. For example, it was a 2-day event, and the Friday was the major event, and Saturday there was the main ceremony. And what the most impressive thing for me was to see the emotions of the inductees. I remember some big players crying and very emotional, or the Japanese widow of Nekoa, also very, very emotional. So as we are speaking right now, to be honored to be inducted, it's a very important thing. And I wanted to ask you about the selection of the inductees, because last year there was a campaign in social media where many other players did not how do you say, win the tryouts, maybe I can say, to be in the Hall of Fame. How will you, or do you think it must be in this year or the next years, or will it be as you did until now, the selection of the inductees?
Yeah, I mean, I think that our selection process is pretty interesting and unique, actually, even among Hall of Fame. So when you think about volleyball at large, it's this incredible amount of volleyball players over the years, and folks that have been inducted to the Hall of Fame. There's only 167 from 26 different countries.
Years, yes.
You know, and there's so many years, so many incredible players. So we have a working list of no less than 200 individuals that could potentially be inducted. And that list only grows every year as people retire and as we continue to learn more about some people that may not have had very large visible roles because, you know, media didn't really exist the way that it did in the 50s, 60s, 70s compared to what we have today. So we want to make sure that we don't miss anybody and that's happened in the past. So I think that what's interesting about our current selection process is that we have this relatively small ballot of maybe 4 people per category or no more than 4 people per category. Okay. And the voting is done by the living inductees. So of the 167 inductees that we have, perhaps there's only 90 that are currently alive. And so that would be the voting group. And then in addition to that, as you talked about with social media, we do have an online fan vote, and that counts for 1 full ballot. And so we run that over a 2-week period, and we'll generally have 20 or 30,000 votes come from that.
I wanted to ask you about this, about the numbers of the voters.
Yeah, it was a very. I'm trying to see if I have any actual what the number was, but it was some incredible number from over 101 different countries that participated in the voting as well. And so that's leading us to look at maybe changing the selection process a bit and giving some weight to this media advisory group, bringing in confederations and being able to really represent as best we can with the volleyball community or who the volleyball community wants to celebrate at the time. A lot of it is, you know, the inherent challenge with our current system is that we have so many inductees from the United States, from Brazil, from Russia, that when the inductees vote, they tend to vote for the people that they know. And so while they're very deserving because they're on the ballot, it means that we are going to probably miss some people just because they don't know who they are, and there's no way around that right now. So we really need to look at what our process is and get that fine-tuned so that we're getting nominations. Anyone in the world can nominate, but not everybody has the same weighted vote, and that's the part that needs to change a little bit.
Yes. It's very also a very human thing. This kind of selection of persons, like the Oscar, the Emmys award ceremony, because not always your candidate will win. It's a natural part of life, but it's very interesting to and we are all expecting the campaign for this year. So it's very amazing to know. And I wanted to ask you now, George, about the possibility maybe that the Hall of Fame could it's a crazy idea that I have in my mind, makes some tours, for example. Sometimes I have seen some museums or Hall of Fame that are traveling outside America and makes, for example, an event in some countries and give flyers, I don't know, materials about their doing. Or for example, in some important championships, for example, we have this year the Olympics in Paris or BNL. Do you have some plans for this to be part? Maybe, I don't know, with a stand, with a booth in some of these events, or it's a little difficult thinking about maybe the FIB International maybe don't like this, or maybe they want this.
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple of things. We have done this on a small scale. So even within the United States, the Women's FIVB Grand Prix was held in Omaha, I think in 2014. And so we saw that as an opportunity to be part of that event. And so we had an information booth there. What it honestly comes down to is just money and being able to have the funds available
That's the important part of all things. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that exactly what you said is true, is that we want to be part of these events. And I think that in the coming years, you'll see that we are. That's going to be an opportunity for us to directly interact with the volleyball community and volleyball fans. And I think that if we're able to raise funds or increase our budget in some way, that will make that easier, and then have some sort of formal recognition and program with the FIVB, because I think tying into the VNL or any of their major events would be something very important. We've done that a little bit, again, in the United States because it's a little bit more inexpensive. With Pro Beach Volleyball to AVP, we were able to have a presence at one of their events last year, in 2022 in December. And that's a great opportunity for us to be front and center with our people.
Super. And I want to change you a bit the subject about our conversation. I want to ask you about volleyball, because volleyball has changed so much in the last 20 years. When I played volleyball in the 80s, it was a very different sport. We used another volleyball. We have different rules, and this time, what's your opinion about actual volleyball? About the rules today? About all the media that involves volleyball? What's your opinion about what we have today in volleyball?
I really love the direction that the sport's going. I think that they're doing a lot of deliberate changes to make it so that the general public would enjoy volleyball. So I know that there's some volleyball players, some old school volleyball players that are not in favor of a lot of these rule changes. I know one big piece that the NCAA in the United States is looking at implementing next year is on ball handling. And so they would be allowing double touches or multiple contacts, on a ball that doesn't travel over the net. And so volleyball purists certainly does not want to see that. They think that it takes all the skill out of the game, when in reality, the bad set is really its own punishment. And so I think it's worth looking at and just seeing if that helps move the game. The last thing you want is for someone to blow the whistle and then have no one have an idea of why the whistle was blown. And I think for the fan that doesn't really understand volleyball, that's how they view it, is that, when you think about football, if Tom Brady is throwing a football and it's not a perfect spiral and it wobbles a little bit, but the guy still catches it, the ref doesn't blow the whistle and say, no, that's no good.
Exactly. Well, it's a so technical sport. So many times people don't know what the referee has whistle, has determined it. So it's so important. And I think today volleyball, thanks to media, thanks to technology, is so fantastic to see. We have the opportunity. We are talking thanks to technology, and I think we're living at a very good time for a sport. So, George, I wanted to thank you again for your time. You know what my feelings about the Hall of Fame are. So I wanted to thank you and keep invited you to follow your work, because I think it's so important, what the Hall of Fame is doing, what I've done, and what you will do in the future. So I want to thank you again and send you my best wishes to you and your family. Hope the snow is not so high and so cold in Holyoke, because Holyoke is a very beautiful city. And I want to send you my best wishes for you, for the Hall of Fame, for all your partners. And I remember when I was there was a headquarters in the hotel. It was amazing. This headquarters with all the ball, all the mini bar, the people, the fantastic people who work with you. So many thanks again, George. Thank you for this conversation. We will keep in touch, absolutely. And that's my humble contribution for this, and I wanted to know that I'm always be grateful for your invitation last year, and I will never keep talking about this. So many thanks, George, again.
Thank you so much. It was honestly our pleasure to have you in Holyoke. I'm so glad that you got to experience that and be able to share your story with others, because it truly is this one item that every volleyball fan needs to do at least once, is get to Holyoke for an induction and experience that. We love having people there, And I think that's the absolute highest level of our sport, is the Hall of Fame. And so we want to be able to celebrate the greats, and really doing it in Holyoke is something special.
Fantastic. Thank you, George.
Thank you.